Happy St. Patrick's Day. I was reading earlier this week that there are more Irish people in New York than there are in Dublin, which surprised me. But then it went on to say there are more Jews in New York than in Tel Aviv, and more Italians in New York than there are in Rome. And I started to question the validity of all that when you put all that together. But anyway, it's a good story that we are really have a lot of Irish in this country. As you know, the Irish were a despised group when they first came over. So many of them came. There was a big anti-immigration thing about them being over here. Then they become the dominant ones, and then they don't like the Italians coming, and and then they don't, so on it goes. First you got to get in, then you got to close the doors. That's the American way. I want to talk to you about story, narrative, your story. In particular, your story, my story, how we define ourselves really affects what can happen to us and through us. By our story, we know who we are, and this is a good thing, a bad thing. So, for instance, I grew up in Sanford, North Carolina, not too far from here. But when I was 20, I went out to the Grand Canyon and I trained to be a river guide, and I became a river guide for about 10 years. And I have kept that definition of myself as both a Southern boy, but that's much less important to me than the fact that I was a river guide. And I kept the story part of that. I see my friends every once in a while. We retell the stories, and I re-imprint them. Of course, we retell the stories, and it's somehow, over time, they get changed a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't get to be more heroic in them, sometimes less. But anyway, we tell the stories over and over, and we reinforce it. We reinforce who we are. And one of the things that happens out of being a river guide is that I drive by a river, I cross a bridge or something, I look down, always have to look to see if there's a river there, how it's doing, could I run it? I'm walking by a stream, it's this deep and about yay wide, but I'm thinking, if I was on a boat, how would I deal with this? I have anything to pick up? If it's really heavy, I go, I got this, I'm a river guide. It's part of my definition. I like to pick up heavy things and carry them. If it's cold outside and I'm beginning to go, I don't know if I really want to go out because it's a little cold and maybe it's raining. It's like, shut up, you're a guide. Get out, get on it. It's my definition. It defines who I am. I could just have easily chosen, well, maybe not just as easily, but I could have chosen, I am a weakling, and I don't like cold weather, and all that. It could have been my definition, but my story doesn't let that happen because I have this story of who I am, and I believe that's who I am, so I do things according to that, right? And so it is with all of us. We all have our story. We tell our stories to ourselves and reinforce them as we go along, and we have memories that go with them. And the memories that we have, you might think of as, let's say, relatively discrete things, these memories that we put in boxes, kind of like we have a bunch of hats and we have hat boxes for them. Do people really do that anymore? But anyway, there was a time when you had, for every hat, you had a hat box, and you'd stack them in your closet, and on Easter, you'd bring out this one. And so it is with our stories. When it comes to the appropriate time, we pull the story out, and we tell it. But when we pull it out, just like the hat out of the hat box, as we put it on or we examine it again, we do change it a little just by the adjustments we make to it. And so then when we put it back in the box, it's a little bit different. And so ultimately, if you've told your story a bunch, you don't have a big clue about what it was originally because you have messed with it all these years. So it's true, I was a river guide, and in my mind, I was a legend, but could be much more modest, really. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Can't fix it. This is my story now. It's my hat. The hat I pull out of the box is I was a legend in my own time, not my own mind, as you think. So, this becomes my story. And I like this one, so I try to keep this on the surface. But there's some of those that we've had that are our story that are not so pleasant, and we keep those too. And the unpleasantness of it all, that unpleasant stuff, we often don't like to go and open the box. Although there's some of us who love to get to know people by going, you know what my hat looks like when I was a kid? It was horrible. This is why I am the way I am today. In effect, that's sort of true, but it's also been modified over time, and so you don't really know if it's true, although I'd be hard-pressed to convince you of that, because it's your memory. This is how I remember it. This is the way it is. I was in India a few years ago, and maybe because we were Americans, but probably not. They said, you know, you're cesspools. And I thought about that. It's like, do you know what a cesspool? They probably should have really said we're holding tanks in a septic system. That's really what they should have said, because it all goes in there and stays in there. Some of it stays in there forever. Some of it leaks out and goes away, but this stuff is in there. And unless you deal with it, it often just stays in there. And so there's a lot of cause for therapy, because what therapy does is you take the hat out of the box, and then you deliberately manipulate it. And then you put it back in. And so you begin to clean up this memory. It becomes something that you can convert into an asset to you. So you might have had a traumatic childhood experience where you were not chosen for the team, but you pull it out and you tell the therapist, and the therapist looks at you, and there's a sense of compassion, and there's an adult side of you that's looking down at this child and holding it in a different way. And so the child, some of the trauma of the child that lives within you is diminished, and the memory is changed a little bit, and you put it back in the box. And then next session you have with your therapist, she asks you to bring it out of the box again, and you look at it, you manipulate it, and you put it back in. And gradually over time it picks up, it cleans up, it can become something more useful. And maybe you convert it into, yeah, this is what made me stronger. This story, this bad story, made me stronger, and therefore it's no longer a bad story, it's my good story. You add it to the narrative that you are stronger because you were rejected. Right? And we teach this in Unity this way. In the typical way in Unity is we say, you know, have a denial about an event in your life that is troubling, whether it be a broken bone or a bad love relationship or your job or whatever it is. And you just say this phrase. You don't deny that you have a hat box with the memory in there. You just deny it has power over you. And so then you take dominion over this memory to some degree, and in taking dominion, you have changed it. You've modified it. It's not as powerful as it once was. It doesn't overwhelm you. This thought, this history has no power over me. It's a very powerful denial. It's good to use if you're overwhelmed by anything. This X, Y, or Z has no dominion over me, because I have dominion over it. I can choose my future. That's the denial. And then we fill in after that with the affirmation. I'm powerful, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm energized, I'm loved, whatever it is that we're asking. And we say that, and it begins to be incorporated into our storyline, and it becomes the future that we can see. That I am loved, I am healthy, I am prosperous, I'm whatever it is. That becomes the future, and we add that to the storyline. It brings us into the future, even though it hasn't happened yet. It feels like it's real, and that reality draws us to it. So that that can also be done by visualization. So you begin to see, let's say you wish to be a successful entrepreneur, you see the outcome, the business, the whatever it is, it becomes successful, and you are enjoying the fruits of success, and you carry yourself in this moment because that is your outcome. It's part of the story. And so that becomes it. You become your story. You make it up. Turns out we make it up all along. Even though we don't think we are, we're making it up. And then we can deliberately make it up if we choose to. And that becomes a skillful way of affecting your life. You're not just what you think happened to you, but you can also be what you wish to become, and you can adjust the storyline. It's powerful. And it kind of parallels so Richard Langan was conducting a workshop the last day and a half, and I was happy to be part of it for the third time. And Richard, I bow before my master. Nice job, one more time. So what Richard, one of the things he said, one of the thoughts that really began to have experiential meaning in this event is essentially that there are four parts to your life. There's the child, there's the baby, there's the child, there's the adult, and then there's the seer, and it's a four-letter word, S-E-E-R, the seer, the one who sees. So I'll talk about the first three. They kind of cluster into almost everyone's in this room's experience. You start out as a child, and you have this fascination with the world. And many of you have seen babies, how they don't really get it, what's out here, right? Have you seen them? They're just like, whoa, everything's an amazing thing. And, the most expensive toy in the tin can have the same value to them. It's just like, oh, wow, look at that. You bring something into view, and they know it's there, but you take it out of view, they don't know it's there. It's disappeared, it's gone. Their world is as it appears to them, right? You with me? Hopefully I won't have to go into that too much. They're just like, whoa, check it out. And it's fascinating. One of the great things about it is that they can be right here, and they turn over here, and all of that is gone, right? There's nothing over there. This is here. Oh my God, look, more, and that's gone, right? That's a child. That's the child's way of seeing the world. Fascinating. They are fascinated by the world because the world is gone, back. It's direct experience. That's all they got. They got no history. They don't have a story to go with it. They have not been trained, conditioned to believe a certain way of perceiving the world is more accurate than that. And that's what they see. Duh. Whoa. Right? Don't forget that, because we'll come back to it. And then you begin to be conditioned. Starts with your parents. They start to tell you who you are, nuggle you, tell you you're a good person. All your parents were really good to you, so they say is, you're just the wonderfulest thing I've ever seen. And they tickle you. They say, look, pull your fingers and go, this is who you are. They tickle you. They tell you your body is here. They convince you that you live inside this corporal thing. And they tell you stories about them and about what you have done in your family and all of that, and it all gets kind of tidied up, and you begin to say, so I'm right here. This is me. This is me. And when I walk into a room, it didn't just appear, it was already there, and the room I left, it's still there. Yeah, they get kind of conditioned to seeing that. They can touch things, and they go, wow, look, my hands. These are my hands, and I touch this, and I know when it's going to happen. That's all kind of tidy, but then they become teenagers, and it becomes really important what other people think of them, so they are always asking, how am I doing? How am I doing? And it turns out, at this point, I should introduce this idea that Richard came here to introduce to all of us. Essentially, you have never seen your face. So if you think about that, you might have seen a picture, you might have seen a mirror, but on direct evidence. I mean, just direct evidence, like a baby. Just direct evidence. You've never seen your face. Right? Now, anybody want to contradict me on this? You can start now. No, you haven't, have you? Just, you can't see your face right this minute. We're going to go with direct evidence, direct experience, only the direct experience, not anything that your teenage friends told you about your face. Your face, the face you think you have, is essentially what everybody else told you have. Right? For better and for worse, really. I mean, by now, most of us are adults and we've incorporated that, so we look in the mirror and we go, oh, that's my face. I'm used to that. Except about my age. You look at it and you go, hell no, that's not my face. I don't look like that. I look like I did over here, not like here. This story is going downhill. No. But indirectly, right at this moment, you don't see your face, do you? You can at least confess to that. I don't see my face. So the Headless Way, the one that Richard is the prophet of, who came to North America to bring the words from England, the prophet of Headless Way is essentially from direct experience. You're not the product of a teenage life. Direct experience hasn't changed really from when you were a child. When you were a child, your direct experience was, I don't have a face, and when I turn this way, it appears, and when I turn this way, that disappears. That's your direct experience today. We are very conditioned to not be able to see that again because we're stuck in this idea that this is me. So conditioned into this is me that I can hardly practice that, but with just a little effort, it can snap back into view and you can look at the world from this way, and then you become headless. And hopefully, while I'm talking, a few of you will practice this and you'll go, ah, so, Master, very good. Zen, I've been practicing my whole life. Now I get it. There's only one hand clapping. Practice this, you'll see what I mean. Anyway, so coming back, your storyline comes along here, and you're getting better and better at refining your story, which we're really happy about. Very happy that you're learning how to do your story very well. That becomes the big process of life. How can I do it? How can I be successful? How can I not only be a river guide, but can I be a husband or a minister or whatever it is I've chosen to be? That I can learn how to do that, and I can clean up some of this stuff, and I can make some new messes, and my story continues. But the one thing you know about this story is it had a beginning, it had a middle, it has an end. And we're okay so far when everybody else having a beginning, a middle, and an end, but we're not so good about our own because we're looking at this thought like there must be more, and so we decide we want to be religious and know what's beyond this point here, what goes on beyond there. So we engage in spirituality, and we go deeper, and we read books, and we all that, we read books, and we read somebody like Jesus, and Jesus says, you know, unless you become like a child, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Or be ye perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. We go, oh man, there's a job. I got to be perfect, and I got to be a child. How am I going to pull this off? Right? And it seems like the Zen teachers are telling us, you know, sit and what is the sound of one hand clapping? And we're like struggling with that, right? It's like, phew. And then Jesus says, let your eye be single, and your whole body will be filled with light. Let your eye be single. What the hell is that talking about? Make it easy for us, Jesus. Jesus says, I came here to, not as someone else, but as your equal, as your friend. I came here to have friends, not to be your boss. Right? All this alludes to a state of consciousness which from the adult narrative sounds like a lot of work. Perfect child, one eye. What is the sound of one hand clapping? All this. It's because, like, good gracious, I'm tired. I'm quitting. So do. Quit making it so hard. Try this. Ask yourself, can I see my face? No. So now look as a child looks at the world. And feel the world from a child's point of view. Be ye as a child. If you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, become bedazzled by the world out there. And realize that there's something to that is really amazing. Because as a child, you are God. When you close your eyes, the world disappears. Poof, just like that. And as God, let there be light, and there was light. A direct experience of the thing we say every Sunday, I and the Father are one. There's only one presence, one power. And it turns out that this ability to be childlike begins to take you back into the direct experience of life before you were conditioned that you were somebody. To the pre-adult state of you are somebody. And you become awareness itself, looking out from a very innocent place of being nobody. No face, no body. No head, no body. You're just nobody. This is the practice. It's not difficult, but it is transformative. My yoke is easy. You lied. It's always been hard to be a good Christian. No, my yoke is easy. Try this. Be like a child. Try something different. Go light. Go small. Infinitesimally small. So small that you become not the face, but the point of awareness that may be hidden inside the face as far as everybody else is concerned. But as far as you're concerned, it's just the awareness itself. And if you pancake the universe onto your shoulders, is what somebody explained it to me. You pancake. So if you don't have a face, all you see is all that's here. You having that experience yet? All you see replaces your face. And turn around. No face. No boundary. Really, you are that. I am that. It's weird. It's a cheap trick. But who says that? So one of the great teachers I've had have said, you are always already awake. You are always already awake. And the funny thing is, this direct experience of life as awareness itself has traveled right through your narrative and carried you right up to this point right here. It has always already been true, and you are just too busy being somebody to see it. And it's the hero's journey to be that one on the journey looking for the Holy Grail all the time, not exactly even knowing what it is, but the Holy Grail was in your backpack the whole time. And finally you get to the awareness and you take it out and you go, oh, there it is, the healing balm right there in my pack. I always had it the whole time. That's me. How about that? You are already the awareness that connects you with everything that is the beginning and the end of everything. You're always there, and you knew it as a baby, kind of didn't know it because you hadn't experienced the whole journey yet. But now as you get older, you go through the loss of innocence, the depths and the struggles of being an adult. You're in the I am somebody to the max. You're even going to therapy. It's really, and you go to church because you want to be good. You're here. All this is happening. And then at some point you recognize, hey, wait a minute, I had this all along. The very thing I was looking for was in my backpack and with me all the time. What a bloody trip that is. Sorry, British man. What a wild thought. Joseph Campbell, he's quoting T.S. Eliot, I think. To go on the journey and to come back and see our home for the first time with eyes like we have never seen it before. But we have, kind of, but long gone. I would never remember my baby childhood. You know, there's a memory barrier that doesn't take us all the way back. It stops around age 4 for 3, 5, depending on some people. You can't remember that. You have to rediscover it anew, fresh, like, oh, wow, I could add this into my repertoire of seeing, and the words of the saints and the sages might make more sense because they are dealing with direct experience and not just with conditioning. Right? We're deconditioning ourselves. We're draining the cesspool. We're just being awake. Innocent and awake. But with a history that means we'll still be functional. We don't have to throw away our lives to wake up. We can actually still be functional. And we'll still go to therapy because we still want this whole thing to work. We'll still go to our job. We'll still take care of the children. We'll still go to the gym and work out. We'll do all those things, but we won't only do those things. We'll also look from innocence at the world we see. Having withdrawn from being a face to being the pinpoint of awareness itself, to being the Big Bang itself, to come inside, no face, the whole world is me, and I am awareness itself. The world is in me. So I had a guru teacher that I used to read years ago, and I couldn't decide if this guy was just so arrogant and so disgusting, or was he brilliant? And he said, I see the whole universe is inside me. What do you think a baby does? It sees the whole world as inside it. And we have chosen to incarnate and get really, really small. But that awareness is just a looking away. So I know many of you, most of you, hardly any of you, actually came yesterday. Richard's going to be here, and I wish he was going to be here for another month because I would keep this up so that you might have that experience. I would probably bore you, but I'll explain why boredom is really good in a minute. But I would love for us to have, as a direct experience, something that we could hold on to so that when we say, there's only one presence and one power in my life and in the universe, there's a joke in there. So it's true. As I see it, it is just as God sees it. Only one presence. Wouldn't that be a trip? And then they wouldn't be just words, but visuals to go with it. We'd have a video to play inside our heads as we explore that idea. Look. Anyway, I probably sold this more than I would allow any guest speaker to come here and do. I find it irritating when they do that. They say, come to my workshop. Well, Richard didn't do that very well, so I'm doing it for him. Come to his workshop this afternoon, and do try to see the world as though you're headless, even if you don't come. Think of this. Come to direct experience. This is the whole Zen thing, isn't it? Direct experience, right? Come on, you Zendo people. You know what I'm doing. To the moment and not to the conditioning. That's what Zen's about, right? To the moment, what do you have? This moment. And all I'm saying is if you get rid of your face, you can do it in this moment. Pretty simple, really. Anyway, I've been on my high horse long enough. Let's do a little practice. So just take a moment. Now, I think when I have heard too many concepts, it's really good for me to move to my heart. And so if you'll just bring your breath and your attention to your heart for a few moments, we'll just kind of recenter into a deeper place. Do that, go deeper. Just settle in. We're going to become as a child and see that we are perfect, which really in the Greek meant we are complete. We will be perfect, complete as a child. We're moving into a state of innocence here. Simple, perfect innocence. Okay. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and to look and to see if you can see your face. And starting with that simple innocence, if you answer as I imagine, no, I can't, then begin to see the world as though you had no head. That instead of you as a little humanoid seeing the world, you are just the seeing going on. The awareness itself. It's a trick. It's not necessarily stable when you first try it. So if it comes in and out of you, that's pretty normal, I think. Okay, so let's open our eyes and look from the world, look out and see if you can see the world as though you had no head. And the whole of the universe is pancaked down on your shoulders. This is the moving from the adult to the seer. Just as the child retains the baby, and the adult retains the child and the baby, the seer retains the adult, the child, the baby. We add one more thing, innocence, back to our seeing. And become the hero. The hero with 1,000 faces. None of them our own. All we see is inside of us. So seeing with eyes open a world we've heard about that seems so far away, that was always here, this simple innocence. And so it is.